So, hi, I'm Helena Lee. I'm the features director at Harper's Bazaar magazine. And I'm truly thrilled to be joined on stage by the marvellous Aimee Lou Wood. Many will know Aimee.
Thank you.
Many will obviously know Aimee from the groundbreaking smash hit Netflix series Sex Education. But beyond Sex Education, she has proved to be a versatile actor with multitudinous skill. Her first lead film role was in Living opposite Bill Nye, which was nominated for 3 Baftas this year and is up for 2 Oscars, so no big deal. And Aimee can currently be seen on stage flexing her acting, singing and dancing muscles as Sally Bowles in Cabaret at the Playhouse. So thank you so much for joining us, Aimee.
Thank you.
Aimee, I wanted to start by asking you about the experience of being on Sex Education. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that the programme is a phenomenon and probably one of the most iconic series, TV show for a generation. And it's taboo busting and brilliant, and I'm sure has spiced up many family conversations. So how did you find that transition from drama school, which was RADA, to something that so informed the cultural conversation?
I found it very overwhelming because it changed. I mean, it was unreal how quick my life changed. It was because you obviously film something and it takes so long to come out.
Yeah.
So you're in this bubble, and I was just in this kind of, this world for 6 months where I made all these amazing new friends, and we were doing this show that was really kind of exciting and original, but we all we had no idea and no thought that it was going to be as massive as it was, because so many amazing shows go on Netflix and then just kind of like don't ever grab, they just kind of, go away, and it's sad. And then you watch them and you think, this is brilliant. Why did this not take off? So we were very aware that that could happen. And I think it was for all of us, it was quite a shock, to be honest, because then we went about, I went and did a play straight after in Chicago, and it was amazing. And I didn't really think that much about this TV show because you just get on with your life. And then however many months on, it comes out and you're walking down the street and all of a sudden your just face is known by so many people that you walk past. It had a real impact on my mental health. Like, I became a bit of a recluse because I just felt deeply overwhelmed by it. And I think so many people think that you're an actor, but most actors are not famous. Yeah. This is what people forget, is most actors have, lifelong careers and they're not famous. It's a very weird thing. Only now am I really starting to enjoy it. Only now am I going, God, what a brilliant thing we're all involved in. I've made these lifelong friends and we've all helped each other so much and supported each other so much through this huge change that's happened for us.
Yeah, because you've spoken so articulately in the past, saying that you obviously get looked a lot by 40 million people, clearly, as an actor, but you don't actually get seen a lot. And I think that's particularly relevant for this character, Aimee, isn't it?
Yeah. It's only just clicked recently that, I get looked at huge amounts, but I don't really get seen by people. It's fascinating, even getting a coffee, and I think I'm quite clearly in a kind of obviously in quite an anxious state, and just trying to go about my day and wearing my pajamas and my cap and everything, and people don't see that. They don't see that that's a person who might be going through their own stuff. They look at you and you're kind of like a novelty. Yeah. And they don't quite, and I understand it, because if you watch someone on your TV screen for, 32 hours, however many episodes of Sex Education there are, then you become a bit two-dimensional to that person. They feel very close to you, but you aren't necessarily a person, you're a character. So, it's a weird one to be looked at so much, but feeling quite unseen. Yeah,
but I suppose it's that idea of projection, isn't it? Because back at home, maybe in lockdown or whatever it was when we started watching it, you are building a relationship with, a one-way relationship with that person in a way. But, in terms of the responsibility of that character, because I think it takes incredible skill to be a comic actor, but you also display such vulnerability and to elicit that sort of empathy from your audience is quite extraordinary. And as an actor, you're making yourself very vulnerable.
Yes.
You know, and you're at the centre of a storyline that explores, you know, your character was sexually assaulted on a bus in series 3, and we see the effects of that in the series. And I know many people have personally come up to you about their experiences because they relate to your character.
Yes, yeah.
Which means you're obviously playing it very well as well. So do you feel a sense of responsibility when you're taking a storyline like this, and how do you personally deal with that?
You know, when I was making that, when we were all making it together, you can't really think about that. Like because it's too overwhelming. Yeah. I just have to be like, I'm an actor, I'm a storyteller. This is Aimee's story. This is not me, Aimee Gibbs. This is Aimee Gibbs' story, and I need to tell this as truthfully and vulnerably as I can, and just be honest. And then you kind of, all of that stuff and the reception. If you're thinking about the reception of something while you're making it, I think that's when you start getting into very tricky territory as an actor, because your main job is to be truthful and go and connect with that story and tell it. So if you start thinking about how people are going to receive, which is so subjective and so you don't know, so you really have to just be in the story. And then, but yeah, you do that, the responsibility, you know, while you're doing it, that you're, you know, that there is a sense of responsibility, but it really, as an actor, you just have to focus on telling the story.
And be singular about what you're trying to portray. Yeah. It's funny because, you know, I thought I'd move on to Cabaret because, again, it's sort of, you have to be quite singular, because when you think about the history of something like Cabaret, it's really quite overwhelming. So I went to see it last week, and it's just so immersive and original and dreamlike, and everyone should go and see it because it's such an experience. And Sally Bowles is such a gift of a role, and it's so iconic. After all, Liza Minnelli played Sally in the film, and Judi Dench was the first person to inhabit the character on stage in the West End. You've always wanted to play Sally Bowles, so what did getting the role mean to you?
Oh, it was just the best thing ever. To my friends and to my family, they all know that this has been the thing in my career so far that's meant the most to me, because that was really nice, because I think generally, you know, people look from the outside, they look in and they go, a Netflix show that 40 million people watch a week that, you know, has kind of blown up so much, that must be the highlight of your career. And actually, although I love Sex Education and it's amazing, you know, as an actor, it's surprising. I think people would be surprised at what we find the most profound. It's usually not the thing that everyone thinks is our kind of, you know, peak. We find there's just, Sally for me was like really personal. Sex Education was it was like a wonderful whirlwind that happened, and all of a sudden I'm in this show and it's like, what the hell? But it was all kind of fluke. Whereas Sally Bowles is something that I have set an intention for to play that part since I was like 10. So to then be doing that is just, you know, it's a real full circle moment. Like, one of my best friends from school watched the gala night, and, you know, my audition for Guys and Dolls when I was 16 at school was singing Maybe This Time. And then he was watching me sing Maybe This Time on stage in the West End as Sally Bowles. So it's really, it's those kind of moments that as an actor you just feel so grateful, rather than the kind of things that everyone else kind of thinks, which is you're invited to all these amazing parties and, you know, which is lovely, but it's the moments where you're like hitting your stride in a part that you just love. It's the moments on set, like playing Aimee. The best part of playing Aimee in Sex Education has not been the Instagram followers that have come with it, or the things that, you know, I've gone to and appeared at. It's in the moments when I'm doing the scene, you know, sat opposite Gillian Anderson doing a therapy scene, and we're both so in it, and you hit the moment where you know that you've got what the scene is and you know that you've landed on it. Those are the moments as an actor that you're like, oh, this is incredible. I
think you can, you know, in terms of hitting your stride, you certainly do that with Sally. I think your Sally's very unique. it's played with the lightness of touch. Again, you display such vulnerability, and it's a lot. You have to sing and dance and have to give so much physically. And I know it was very emotional the first time you started first moving, and doing all the rehearsals and moving on stage. And you've said that using your body as a means of self-expression is a baffling concept. Why was that?
Yeah, that was... What's great about Sally is actually she's a character by Christopher Isherwood, who he wrote a story about her, and then she's appeared in so many different plays and stories, and she's got lots of different iterations. But Liza is amazing, but she's not Sally, right? Because the actual Sally was not the best singer, not the best dancer. She was this charismatic, only 19, drank too much gin, whirlwind that wanted to be an actor, and the chances are that she might not make it. There has to be the possibility that she might not make it, because whereas then they changed that all for Liza and made it that she was this American who was incredible at dancing, incredible at singing. So everyone thinks of that as being Sally, but the actual Sally is way more like Judi Dench's, who had that raspy voice, that she performed the hell out of it, but she wasn't perfect. And I think that was really helpful, was connecting back to the character of Sally Bowles, the actual Sally Bowles, and knowing that she's not supposed to be. So that helped me a lot with the whole fear of dancing, was that Sally was not actually Liza. Thank God.
Liza, go back into
and also, because of my past with eating disorders and body dysmorphia, I have for lots of my life felt like a floating head that's just like a brain that's got all these ideas and all these things, but doesn't really know how to connect my brain to my body, because my body I just kind of hated. Don't anymore, thank God. But, I just didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to be in it because I kind of wanted to escape it. So then going to drama school, and then it gets even worse, because then you're at drama school and certain people in the teacher's eyes are brilliant movers and certain people aren't. Certain people are deemed as awkward, or, that even today I went for a Pilates thing, I was saying, and the lady was so annoyed at my drama school teachers, because she was because they knew that I had scoliosis and that my spine is, curved, but they were trying to make me look like everyone else and stand but neutral for me is not neutral for, it's different. And she was saying, we need to find your alignment, what yours is, not what everyone else is, and not... So you go to drama school and everyone's kind of being straightened out and turned into what they think looks like a great, actor and a strong actor. But it's really hard to be told day in, day out that you're moving wrong, especially when you're also struggling with, bulimia and, all that stuff. It's basically like a tirade on your body. You're being told that you're wrong, you look wrong, you're not standing right. It's all... And you also have your own private stuff going on. So it becomes you just detach and disassociate from your body more and more and more. And so then when I turned up for the first dance session for Cabaret, I was on the verge of tears. And I walked in and I was like, this is just terrifying to me. This is terrifying. And Julia, who is the choreographer, who's just incredible, we just spent the first 3 times that I saw her, she didn't teach me any steps. She didn't teach me any moves. She was like, there's nothing that you can get wrong for these first sessions. We are just going to move our bodies. So she would put music on and she made me pick 5 of my favourite songs, and we would just move in the room, and she would go first and then I would go, and just had to respond to the music that was playing and get free and lose that self-consciousness. For the first hour, I was like, this is hell. And then by the end of it, I loved it. I loved it. It felt so... And she said the same thing. She was like, I was told I wasn't a ballet dancer. I wasn't a tap dancer. I had to find my own. Yeah. She was like, I knew I was a dancer, but everyone was telling me that they didn't know what box to put me in. Yeah. So I had to find my own. And that's what I love about this show, Cabaret, is that it's people who are, they're originals and they're putting their own their you-ness into it and their uniqueness, and it makes you feel so free to be you.
I definitely feel there's a theme in the characters you choose or what you're doing, which is, it is really breaking out of labels and boxes and all these things that are put upon you, and the conventions that we're usually, you know, we were just talking with Naomi about this, about women's bodies, and you know, I know you've spoken in the past about growing up in Stockport, where it was very, very acceptable for men just to comment on your body all the time.
Constant. Could not leave the house without knowing that someone was going to comment on how you looked. Whether it was what you were wearing, if you'd lost weight, if you put on weight, it was like a running commentary. Like, it was like a Greek chorus. Every time you stepped out of just people, it was just so ingrained within that. It was normal. It was the norm. And then when I moved to London and I realised that I could go to the shops in my pyjamas and no one gave a shit, I was like, oh my God, I'm home. Yeah.
And I think it's really great that you work with these brilliant women who have experience. You know, I know you've spoken about working with the Oscar and Bafta-winning costume designer Sandy Powell on Living.
Yeah.
Why did you find working with Sandy so empowering? Because what did she do specifically to empower you as an actor to have your creative freedom?
Well, because I've had many awful experiences with costume designers. Many. Because people, I think, forget that you're a person, you're not a mannequin. So you've got feelings, and they forget that. And you walk in, and I've had so many people, I mean, it's actually shocking how many times people have thought it was totally acceptable to comment on my body and tell me, you know, I've actually had one costume designer that told me to eat radishes and nothing else.
Wow.
So that I could fit back in the jeans that I had previously worn. So, you know, I already had a fear of costume fittings because of all my stuff that I've talked about just then. But then to have it confirmed to me, that's what felt so horrific, was that I was so ready to be proved wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm out in the world, and you know what? I'm going to meet these amazing people, and they're going to my fears are going to go, and I'm going to realise it's not like that. And then, boom, I just had this really bad experience. And Sandy just changed it all for me, because she's probably the best costume designer there is. Yeah. Like, won about 1 million Oscars, 1 million BAFTAs. Like, she's incredible, and she's so herself. And I walked in, and she had all this stuff that, you know, she and the director Oliver had kind of decided how Margaret was going to look and what colours she'd wear and all that stuff. And then I walked in, and Sandy was like, she saw me in real life, and she scrapped it all and she worked it around me.
Yeah.
She didn't try and make me fit into something that she'd already decided. And she was just she was asking me what I thought Margaret would wear, what I felt like and it became, you know, she just knew that there was a person stood in front of her. And I opened up to her about my experiences on previous things, and she was just mortified, because she was like, our job is to create this character with you. You are the character. That is who. So how could you possibly be the wrong shape or the wrong size for the character when you are the character? Yeah. So, you know, she was absolutely, and I just, having great chats with her. She doesn't even know, by the way, how much of an effect she's had on me. She sees me, I'm always like, you just changed how and she's like, all right, you know. Because she, you know, but she really did change my mindset. And now I have real, like, rules and boundaries when I go in. I say, please don't shout my measurements across the room. Can you just write them down? You don't need to be shouting them across the room. And I don't want to know. Like, because numbers are such a thing that you attach to when you have an eating disorder. Your brain attaches to numbers so much. So it's like, just not helpful. So just things that I set out now when I go in. But I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't had Sandy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why she's got the Oscar, and the other person probably doesn't.
Exactly.
Yeah. The film Living, I think, marks quite a step change in your career, you know, because it's such an incredible film. The screenplay is by the novelist Kazuo Ishiguro, and your main scenes are with Bill Nye, and the film is such a beautiful, quiet meditation on being alive, and there are so many wonderful two-handers between you. And there's a pivotal moment in the film when Bill's character bumps into Margaret, Amy's character, and then he understands what it is to live. You know, it's quite an amazing connection, and she becomes a sort of unlikely saviour in his redemption. How different was it working on something like this? You know, when you're able to sort of reshoot something maybe and do it again 19 times and go deeper, which I feel is so reflective of Kazuo Ishiguro's perfect writing.
He's perfect.
Yeah.
And as a person, he is the kindest. The kindness that comes through in his writing, and then you meet him and you go, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Or every single page is just so full of love and tenderness. Like, he's just a beautiful person, and his attention to detail, and just, he's so... But also, he's very... But he also let me improvise. Like, he let me... There was a scene that he had these nicknames made up for the different characters in the office that were written into that scene where me and Bill go to Fortnum & Mason's. But I said, can I make up my own? Because I was watching what the actors were doing.
Oh, brilliant.
And I actually was taking the piss out of what the actors were doing, which Oliver Chris, who played one of the parts, was like, the confused chimney. What do you mean I look confused? But I was like, can I make these nicknames up, like, based off what the actors were doing? And Ish is so like, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And I think all the best writers that I've worked with are very like, they've got amazing attention to detail and everything, but they're also very free with letting it kind of change, depending on, you know, what's going on there with the actors. But but what was the question? It was...
How was it different from what you'd done before? Because, you know, sex education is a lot more sort of...
Time thing.
Yeah.
It was time. Time, just being able to... Oliver, our director, just created the most focused atmosphere on set, and we could just go over and over and just go deeper and deeper, and you don't get that on TV. Because it's like, go, go, go.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, it's like the most pivotal scene in your character's arc, and we've got 3 takes.
Yeah.
We can only do 3 takes. And so it's a great skill.
Yeah.
It really teaches you how to, quick ways to dive into exactly where you need to be in that story, and exactly, which is so different to theatre, because you have 5 weeks of rehearsing.
Yeah.
And then you have months of doing it. By the end, the show is not the same as what it is when you opened it, because you've found, the depth you've found is beyond. But it's kind of like that doing living.
Yeah.
It was more like theatre than TV, even though it was camera. It was more like theatre. We had so much time, and we did rehearse, and we did meet up and have endless conversations about the character. And it was just lovely having time.
Yeah. Time. It's a luxury, I think. I think as an audience, it's easy, when you're watching characters on screen, it's easy to underestimate the process or experience of a project and how wonderful or gruelling it can be. And so what have you taken from each character, which are all so different, and how have they shaped you?
Both Amy and Margaret, actually, I feel like, are very present. They're very good at being present. And that's something that I struggle with, because I get so lost in my head. But they are both so in life. Yeah. And so both, that was really what I took from them. And also Amy's just like courage in being, you know, in saying that she needs help, in asking for help, and in, you know, admitting that she hasn't got it all figured out. She's so open about that, and that made me a lot more open about saying when I need people, and, you know, not trying to be so independent, and actually saying, I actually want your help here, and you know, and she really taught me that. Margaret taught me about just like being there, and also, you know, valuing life from what it feels like, rather than what other people are perceiving. Because Margaret's like, she's happy to leave a job that's really respectable to go to one that maybe is deemed less respectable, because she thinks she'll have more fun at the less respectable one. Yeah. And I'm like, cool. Like, she's not about what everyone else thinks of her. Yeah. And you know, I've learned so much. I think Sally is probably going to teach me more than any of them. Just pure repetition. because of the fact that I'm going to do this show hundreds of times, like I did with Sonia in Uncle Vanya, which I found really difficult because there's no catharsis for Sonia.
Yeah.
Like, she goes through the play being like the glue of the family, and she ends as the glue of the family, even though the love of her life has gone. She's never going to see him again. She's just remains this, she has to be so solid for everyone else. And doing that night after night was like, phew. Whereas in Cabaret, Sally gets the number Cabaret to it. I see that every night as an exorcism. Like, I literally am like, this is, and I can't wait for it. Because if I've had a bit of a bad show where I felt, you know, self-conscious or nervous, I just think, get me to Cabaret, because then I'm going to go absolutely, I'm just going to explode. Yeah. And then I can leave being like, whew, okay. I left it all out there and now I don't need to bring it home with me. But that is something that I'm learning. I'm not very good at that. And Vivian, who plays Fräulein Schneider in the show, she's really helping me be like, breakdown happens on stage, not off. Yeah. Okay, it's done now. And she comes in my dressing room, she's like, look at me, it's gone. And like, my vocal coach has left me a notebook that says, write 3 things I liked. Yeah. So I have to write 3 things every night that I liked about the show, and then I have to put the book away, and that's the show done. I can't be going home and going, but that bit in Perfectly Marvellous where you didn't quite crack the egg quick enough, or you didn't drink, you know, I can't be doing that every night because I'm already in such a vulnerable place after I've done Cabaret that I then can't make myself even more, you know, it's masochistic. So I have to leave it. Even if it's a good show, you have to leave it. You can't keep thinking about that, because then if you try and repeat the good show, it's not going to work. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned Fräulein Schneider, and we've talked about sort of the importance of having mentors, but it's also important for you to surround yourself with people who you trust and nurture your creativity. And I know you have a tight crew on sex education, and that's, I bet, a WhatsApp group that everyone wants to be part of.
Yeah, but several WhatsApp
breakout
groups. I'm like, why do we have so many WhatsApp groups? It's the same people.
But you also have what you call your moon coven, your group of friends. And I know at our Women of the Year awards several years ago, we met one of your best friends who was your guest. Why is platonic friendship so underrated?
It's so underrated. Like, it is the best thing in the world. I don't think, do you ever feel more free and more just, it's this, like, I remember my therapist saying recently, she wanted me to, like, reflect on the word ease, because she was like, what I see in you is that there's not a lot of ease. Like, there's a lot of passion, compassion, not a lot of dispassion, right? So where can you be easy? Where in your life are you easy? And it was such a good thing to reflect on. And I was like, with my friends, it is so easy. Like, it's just, I don't think I ever have a moment of self-consciousness when I'm with my friends. It's just like, I'm just there. And I'm so, it's so safe, and it's so supportive and so nurturing and so uplifting. And I just think that friendship is the most beautiful thing in the world. And we are so obsessed with romantic love, like obsessed with it, which, you know, is because of rom-coms and what we grow up on, fairy tales, and
aren't they damaging?
Yes, which, you know, I love, but you don't, you know, when you go home, if I go home to Stockport after a while, I get asked about, a lot of the time, the first thing that someone asks me is how my boyfriend is, and before they even ask me how I am, and they never say, how are your friends? Yeah. It's not a thing within our, like, world to be like, and how are your friends? Yeah. We ask about how someone's partner is, but you can have just as much closeness with your friends, and they are just as big a part of your life, but they're not perceived as that, even though everyone I know in the world has a best friend who means everything to them, but yet we don't give that the same level of importance as a romantic partner, which I just find really strange. Yeah. And I think we need to just celebrate platonic connections so much more.
Finally, I suppose in the spirit of this, and also International Women's Day, if you could talk to the girl at drama school and give her some advice, what do you think you would say to her now?
Oh my God. Embrace embarrassment. Get up. Get up. Do the poem. Honestly, I was always the last one to get up. I would be watching the clock and I'd be letting everyone else get up to show their thing, and then the bell would go and I'd go, oh, I didn't get to do mine. Yeah. But it was because I just didn't ever want to get up and do anything before it was perfect. Yeah. such a perfection, and it would be like, I don't want anyone to see a work in progress, which just shifted so much when I left drama school, because I was like, had this realization where I was like, the most interesting work you ever do is the imperfect, vulnerable, raw, and that's the work that you love. So why in drama school did you never let people see that?
Yeah.
I did by third year, I was like, but the first 2 years I spent just not ever wanting to embarrass myself. And drama school is the perfect place to embarrass yourself every single day for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then you're pretty indestructible by the time you leave, because you have made such a fool of yourself for 3 years that you can deal with anything. But I just didn't, I wish I'd used that time a bit more to be less cool and more, you know, like let myself be clumsy and let myself go wrong.
I do think that's quite a good metaphor for life, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, wonderful words of wisdom. Thank you so much, Aimee Lou Wood, for being so generous and honest
Thank you.
with us tonight.